Mais comment rentrer?
Ben, maintenant, je ne sais pas s'il parle.
On attend, on attend.
I'm on Zoom on the call station now. I'm looking for that fly to kill it. No, but I'm just warning you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Presumably, we are members of the greater spiritual family of Brother Charles, now Saint Brother Charles, perhaps as many as 20 or 25 different countries or so. That has been the tradition in the last two meetings. Welcome again to this final conversation with Brother Charles de Foucauld. My name is Ciro Piccirillo, and I'm a member of the lay fraternity in Montreal, Canada. We've had the blessing in the last few weeks to gather virtually, thank God for technology, to remember and embrace the heritage that we have all received. And today we have an extraordinary final witness, final speaker who will join us, and I'll have the privilege of introducing him in the upcoming minutes. As you are well aware, these virtual gatherings are extraordinary opportunities of connecting. But to connect ourselves, we need to make sure that we disconnect on multiple levels. Here are a few tips to enable us to reach a more prayerful gathering. Please make sure that your microphones remain off or on mute at all times. We kindly ask you to check your environment for any distractions and background noise that may distract you and possibly distract the virtual audience. I can assure you that we will have the opportunity to speak and to share amply. Let's practice mindful listening, particularly in these virtual settings. And as we move forward, additional instructions will be given to you in the upcoming minutes. Brother Charles has multiple faces, and he has entered our lives in multiple ways. And our encounters with him are extraordinarily diverse. And we've had this, we've seen this as an example in recent weeks. And for those of you who've gone to Rome and met people from all over the globe, we can appreciate and embrace the extraordinary richness of these encounters with Brother Charles. He really represents many things, unique things to each and every single one of us. What's extraordinary is that despite this wonderful diversity of encounters with him, we are deeply united by a common spirituality of the encounter and universal brotherhood. And in a way, what we have tried to achieve in recent weeks through these conversations is really to embrace this heritage, this unique heritage that we've all received in our hearts, and how it is to be flourished, preserved, and transmitted today and tomorrow. We typically have 2 speakers per conversation, but today, what extraordinary opportunity for each and every one of us, for the greater community here reunited on this Zoom virtual community gathering. We actually have one speaker in the name of Father John McWilliams, Bishop of Lagouat in the Algerian desert. Oh, forgive me, this is an error. The revised slide did not show up. We have one speaker, and I will be introducing him in the upcoming minutes. We will have an ample sharing period following that intervention from Bishop McWilliams, perhaps something of the order of half hour. We will then proceed with a common prayer, a prayer of abandonment. And if time and the willingness is present, we will have the opportunity of having a brief moment of sharing. So, who is Bishop John McWilliams? The introduction is a little lengthy, but it's an extraordinary path to describe the history of the witness, the brother that is here with us today. It really is worth taking the time to discover who this man is. John McWilliams was born in Wimbledon, in England. I will say 1948, and forgive me, Father, my brother, for revealing your age, but this is the age of forgiveness. You are the third of 6 children of Maurice McWilliams and your mother, Nora, born young. His father, an Anglican, was a distinguished army officer, and his mother was a Catholic. And by agreement, the children were all brought up in her faith, though there was no overt Catholicism practice in the household. A childhood which included time spent in Sudan and Somaliland in the colonial times of the 1950s led on to John studying as a boarder in the Benedictine public school at Worth Abbey in Sussex. It was here that he began to deepen his relationship with Christ, though he felt that his vocation in life was in the army, participating in the defense of his country and serving world peace during the Cold War days. After 2 years at the Military Academy of Sandhurst, he was commissioned into the Queen's Regiment and served as an infantry officer in the Northern Ireland, multiple times, I must say, in Western Germany with NATO, the Sultanate of Oman, and finally in the recently independent Zimbabwe. In 1984, at a very young age of 35, hearing a call to be a missionary priest, he retired from the army with the rank of major. John, our brother, joined the missionaries of Africa, the White Fathers, we all know them, with whom he studied philosophy for 2 years in London. Then, after a spiritual year in Switzerland and 2 years of missionary experience in Tunisia, a further 3 years of theology studies followed, also at the Missionary Institute in London. He made his missionary oath on the 7th of December, 1991, and was ordained deacon the very same day. On the 4th of July, 1992, he was ordained priest, at Worth Abbey by Bishop Francis Walmesley, the Bishop of the Forces. For the next 3 years, our brothers studied in Rome at the Pontifical Institute of Studies of Arabic and Islamology. PISAI is the acronym, and was then appointed to Tizi Ouzou in Algeria, where 4 white fathers, who have since been beatified as martyrs, had been murdered the previous year. After 5 years there and 2 in Algiers, John joined a community in Gardaya in the Sahara, where he grew close to the neighboring Muslim people through his teaching of English and library service. From 2008 and 2015, he was in Tunisia, finally working again in a library for local school children, and later in the restoration of the building after a tragic fire. In 2015, he was appointed Provincial Superior of the Missionaries of Africa for North Africa. Then came a wonderful moment. In March of 2017, Pope Francis appointed our brother, Bishop of Lagoat, in the Algerian desert, in the Sahara. He was ordained bishop at Worth Abbey the 20th May, same year, and installed in his diocese at Gardaya later on that month in May. He is pastor to a small number of Catholics in his huge 2 million square kilometer diocese, of whom about 40 are missionary priests, brothers, or sisters. Others include migrants, foreign oil workers, and some Algerians. There are about 4.5 million Muslims living in the diocese, and the church's mission is to be there with them whilst silently being witnesses to the good news of Jesus Christ. The diocese includes Beniabes, Tamanrasset, where Brother Charles, Saint Brother Charles de Foucauld lived and died, as well as El Mania, where his tomb is still there today. Without any further ado, we will leave the podium, the very high podium, and the microphone to our brother John, who will share with us his experience as bishop in the diocese, relating to us the reality of Christians and the church in that diocese, and perhaps give us a glimpse of how the footsteps of Brother Charles have really continued to nurture that community to this very day. Bishop McWilliams, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Thank you very much to everyone who is there, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever. As has been said, this is the third talk. You've had already an overview of the life and spirituality of Charles de Foucauld from little sister Kathleen and Rosemary. And then the second one on the 8th of May was where and how did Brother Charles call us to be present today. So I won't be talking so much about Brother Charles and Saint Charles, but much more about the diocese where he felt called to serve the Lord in the Sahara in Algeria. So I will start wide and then bring it closer together. The church in Algeria is part of the church in North Africa. And so the Bishops' Conference for the region of North Africa, which is one conference, one region, covers 5 countries. It covers Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and the Western Sahara, which, as you probably know, is occupied mostly by Morocco, and it's disputed. Morocco claims it, but others claim independence. So we're very small as a Bishops' Conference. We have 10 dioceses, just 6 bishops at the moment, and there are differences in each country. Some of the countries don't get on well together, but we try to get together, but it's not easy for the bishops and the vicar generals who are with us to meet up. Sometimes we've had to come to Rome or even go to Senegal to meet because of the difficulties with visas and so on. But we have one identity which is common, and that is that we are all Christians living in Muslim environment, and we have the same mission of witnessing to our Lord Jesus among our Muslim brothers and sisters. So today the subject then is the reality of the church in Algeria, and in particular the Sahara. As far as Algeria is concerned, the Catholic Church doesn't exist for the authorities. It has no judicial status, although there is a papal nunciature, an embassy, Vatican embassy. There are diplomatic relations between the state and the Vatican as a country. And the Catholic Church is what is known as the Association Diocésaine d'Algérie, the Algerian Diocesan Association, and it is simply an association and with non-lucrative aims, just like any other cultural association or a football club or anything like that. The same thing for the Protestants. It's the Église Protestante d'Algérie, and so the Protestant churches are regrouped in that as an association. That has some advantages, but a certain number of disadvantages as well. It means that all our correspondence, our relationships with the authorities, the requests to have residence permits and so on, all have to go through the association. The president of the association and the secretary and so on have to have Algerian nationality according to the law, and that is a problem because we don't have so many Algerian nationals among the church. And the last bishop, the last one who was a bishop who had Algerian nationality, has just retired. And so at the moment, none of the bishops have the nationality to be the president of what is in effect the church. So we have to find a way of living at the same time in accordance with the law of the country and this association, and at the same time with church law, church way of doing things, and church authority, which of course the pastors are the bishops, and so we have to find ways of how we can do that without in any way upsetting the authorities. So within the association, we are effectively talking about the Catholic Church as it is in any other country, with bishops appointed by the Holy Father for the 4 dioceses which make up Algeria. The 3 dioceses in the north are Algiers in the center on the Mediterranean coast. Then to the east of Algeria, the Algiers diocese, we have the diocese of Constantine and Hippo. Hippo is what was the diocese of St. Augustine, and his basilica is there. It's a small diocese, again, with not very many Christians. And then in the western side of the Mediterranean coast part, there is the diocese of Oran, another small diocese. So all of those dioceses just go inland for maybe 100 kilometers, 100 miles maybe at the most. And then everything that is south of there is the diocese of Laguat, or the Sahara, as we call it, or sometimes they just say the south, the diocese of the south, and that is the diocese which I have the joy and the privilege of serving the Lord in, and the diocese in which St. Charles de Foucauld lived, and he only went really through Algiers. Well, he went to Sétif as a soldier, but he went through Algiers only when he was going to France, or when he went and stayed for one reason or another with the White Fathers in their mother house in Algiers. So our diocese, the history, why is it called the Diocese of Laguat? Laguat is a town in the north of the diocese, which was a big military and administrative town in the French colonial times, and they built a beautiful church. And when in 1955, it became a diocese rather than a prelature or a vicariate or whatever it was before, the visitor who came to visit saw that beautiful church and said, that is a cathedral, it will be the Diocese of Laguat, which is fine to have a nice cathedral in the sea of the diocese, but it wasn't very practical from point of view geography. It was a rather long way too far away from most of the other missionary posts, such another 200, 300 kilometers away from Tamanrasset, for example. And then after 7 years later, independence came. All the Christians virtually left, apart from the sisters and the fathers. And we carried on calling it the Diocese of Laguat. And then in 2001, finally, when the last of the sisters, the white sisters and the white fathers said they could no longer find the missionaries for Laguat, we moved back to where we had been before in Gardaya. And Gardaya is now the center of the diocese, both more or less geographically, but certainly that's where we have the bishop's offices, and we have a white father community, a white sister community, and a few lay people. So we often speak of the Diocese of Laguat Gardaya. The official name is Laguat, but the actual place where we work from, spreading out to the other places, is Gardaya. Which is an interesting town, but I won't go into the details unless there are questions. As you already heard, the diocese is composed of about 40 missionaries, and then the other groups. Just to give you an idea of the numbers, statistics I know are boring, but anyway, they sometimes help. And I don't think you need a map. I hope you don't need a map. If you do, I expect Cyril will put one up on the thing. But we have 10 places where we have a permanent Christian presence, and another 4 where we have buildings where we did have someone, but they've left and the building is empty or looked after by a guard or somebody taking care of it, and so to which obviously we would much prefer to find some Christian couple or individual or community to live there. But at the moment, those places are empty as far as the Christian community is concerned. We don't want to lose them, because once we sell a building somewhere, we can't buy another one. They wouldn't sell to us, the Catholic Church as we are. And so we want to hold on to what we've got, in the hopes, maybe optimistic, but that we will once again be able to install someone of the church in those places where there's often a long history connected to both the church and indeed, sometimes to Charles de Foucauld. So we have one bishop, that's me. There's a bishop emeritus, Bishop Claude Rowe, who lives in France and comes to visit frequently. Some of you may have met him when he was here in Rome for the canonization. We've got 14 priests at the moment living in the diocese. None of them are incardinated in our diocese. They all belong to religious congregations or to the priestly fraternity of Charles de Foucauld. We have 7 or 8 white fathers, one from the Italian foreign missions, one little brother of Jesus, one little brother of the gospel, and then 4, in fact, from the priestly fraternity, of whom one is studying in Rome at the moment, studying for further doctorate in Arabic. And I think that's about it. So it's a small number, and of course, they do get moved around, changed sometimes, either to another country or another diocese by their congregations, which of course is their right. We have 7 brothers, religious brothers, mostly little brothers of Jesus or the gospel. And then we have 23 sisters at the last count, and 1 lay person working in Tamanrasset with the sisters there. And of course, at the moment, there are a number who are away for one reason or another, for health reasons, for home leave, or for studies, and so on. So the actual numbers are a little bit lower than those who are on the ground as we speak today. So I make that round about 46, what we call permanent members of the diocese, in the sense that they are nearly all foreigners. 2 of the little brothers of Jesus do have Algerian nationality as well, which gives them a little bit more freedom, because the foreigners, especially in the south of Algeria, we are controlled. Sometimes we have to be escorted when we go from one place to another, or we are not allowed to take public transport, such as the buses and so on. So that is a bit of a restriction, but it's not our country, so we accept what is required of us as foreigners, and we are grateful to be given the privilege of residing in the country where the Lord sends us. Among other people, firstly, the ministerial work, the apostolate that we have to the Christians. The other Christians who are there, it was mentioned that there are migrants. It's impossible to know how many they are. They come through Mali and Niger, the countries to the south of us. They come from Cameroon, Nigeria, those countries on the coast mostly. Some come to work, but many come to pass through our diocese and then to the north. And usually, in the case of Algeria, they go to the northwest and try to cross to Morocco and then to Spain as part of their migration path. Of course, they don't have their papers in order, and so they have difficulty with the authorities sometimes, and we are not able to accommodate them in our houses because we have to declare any foreigner who's staying with us. So we're slightly limited, but they do come to Mass or to, sometimes to visit, especially in Tamanrasset and in one or two other places in Ouagla. We do have migrants, Christian migrants, who do come and pray with us. And in Ouagla, also the Protestant church, there is a pastor, and they also have a Christian parish, which includes the migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. Then there are prisoners, and they are from the same source. They are also sub-Saharan Africans who were passing through, and for one reason or other, sadly, got into trouble with the authorities and are locked up for anything from 5 years to life. It depends what they are accused and found guilty of having done. And fortunately, the Ministry of Justice allows us, the Church, to visit the Christian and Christian prisoners to pray with them. And this is the most important part of our ministry. These are people, men and a few women, who are a long way from home. Very often their families don't even know that they're there. And they don't get the visits like the other prisoners do, from family visits from time to time, and so on. So our chaplains, who are mostly sisters, fathers, brothers, visit once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, once every 2 months, depends how often they can and what distance it involves, for just a little bit of Bible sharing, a prayer, and occasionally they are able to listen to the difficulties and maybe even transmit a message to the families, pick up the phone and pass a message on to the family, and get news of the family occasionally. But we're not allowed really to do the social service work. They have other people who are supposed to do that. But there you have the problem that the prisoners don't speak, the foreign prisoners don't speak Arabic, so it's a bit difficult. But we try to encourage them. And I was, Christmas Eve, I was at the prison at La Bouillotte Sidi Sheikh and visited 4 prisoners who were there. They didn't know I was coming, but they were so happy to actually get a visit from a chaplain, from the bishop, in fact. And so we were able to pray together. And so that is an enriching part. And that, I think, for us as missionaries, is the most important part. And I think we can think that it's not only the prisoners who get something from it, but the prison guards, they see that we don't abandon our people. We do think of them, we do come to pray with them. And then, so if they notice that, maybe they say it to their families. And so little by little, it filters out into the society that, yes, Jesus said, I was in prison and you came to visit me. And that's what we're there for. That's part of what we're there for. Then, so other than the migrants and the prisoners, there are people working in the oil fields or construction work who come from abroad, among whom there are obviously Christians, especially Europeans, North Americans, Filipinos, but they are all enclosed in their bases. And as things are at the moment, we're not allowed to go into the bases for security reasons, and they're not allowed to come out, except occasionally with an escort to come for Easter or Christmas in just one or two places. So they do tend to manage to get home or abroad fairly regularly, maybe every 2 months or 3 months or a bit more for Philippines. And so they're not completely, they have their own home churches where they can be part of their home church. So it's not so important for them to be part of our church there. But so and when we are in contact with them, they do support us. They do sometimes provide some funds to help in some of the missionary work that we are doing, some of the caritative work that we try to do. And then as far as the activities we have, the first thing is, why are we there? People say, why are you there? If there are so few Christians, what on earth are you doing? You've got no baptisms, you've got no catechism, first communions, there's no children, there's no elderly people, all the activities that most of you in North America and in Europe have, or anywhere else in the world, you have, where you have a parish, a normal parish with families and so on. We don't. There are no families apart from a few of the migrant families. And so what are we there for? Well, the reason we are there is to be there. And anyone who knows the mission in North Africa will know that it's the being there that is the most important part. Because if we are not there, then there is no one on the ground to witness to the Christian faith by our being there. And so since we are there, then obviously we see if there is something we can do to help, to be useful, some work which corresponds to what the Gospels and St. James's epistles and so on tell us about being taking care of those who are in need. So the first thing then is to be present, and then our presence, we try to look for ways in which, in particular, we can be in contact with the local people. So it's the same as St. Charles. He was there, he was in Beni Abbes, he was in Tamanrasset, and he had his prayer life, he had his dictionary translating life, but he didn't do that on his own. He was meeting with the people to get the Tamshek language and find out and check with them and so on. So he was in contact with the people and didn't touch their religion, they didn't touch his religion, they respected each, but of course he knew their religion, and they probably didn't know much about ours. There are a few particular projects that we have wherein the sisters and the brothers and the fathers get involved with, which are helpful to the people. The first one in our diocese in particular is handicapped children. We have 4 or 5 communities of sisters where there are sisters who they're not allowed to work. As foreigners, we're not allowed to have employment, paid employment, or anything which resembles that. But they give advice to the mothers or the parents of handicapped children, different sorts of handicap, as to how to better care for their children. Because in the society there, if a child is handicapped, sometimes they are just shut away in the house and they don't go out, they don't go to school, of course, and they spend their whole life never getting any stimulation. And even some who could walk with exercise and so on, are able to do so thanks to what the sisters help the parents to do, but it requires continuing aid. And so that is one of the main projects we have, and we are supported by Missio, Miserio, Aid to the Church in Distress, and other organizations. Of course, the Pontifical Missionary Works and the Holy Childhood. They also help us to support and to finance the sisters who are in that work. I say sisters, it's mainly sisters. And so hopefully those families will then be able to look after the children, the handicapped children, as they grow older, and will know a little bit better how to care for them. Educational aid we have both for children. Mainly it's in helping them with their English or their French language homework courses in, once a week, evening classes or at the weekends. It's very much demanded by the parents and also by the children if it helps them a bit to get a better level for their exams as they go through school. We don't necessarily follow the school program, but the important thing there again, the children don't forget. I was in Assakrem one time, and a group from Mozambique, from Gardea, came to visit. And so I just went over where the brother was explaining how they captured the water from the rains and filtered it so that they would have something to drink throughout the year. And so I just said hello, and I was from Gardea, and one of them said, aren't you Mr. John? So I said, yes. And he said, oh, you taught me English when I was doing my baccalaureate, and you were my English teacher, and in Gardea. And that had been at least 10 years earlier. And so I was very happy to see him. And so I said, what are you doing now? And he said, oh, I'm an English teacher in a private school. So there you are. They don't forget, they remember us. And so I think in that sense, we don't realize whether or not they remember that aspect of their childhood. But I think they're knowing that we are present, that we are Christian, and that we hopefully we were not too wicked with them. We were kind and let's say Christian towards them. Hopefully that remains in their minds as they grow older, and when they talk to their own children, if ever they ask, who are these Christian people, they will reply positively. And so that's part of what we're there for. Promotion of women, that is a little mostly sewing and macrame and things like that, where some of the sisters teach them. It's something which the white sisters and the little sisters have done for long years, for a long time. And it gives women in the villages or wherever they are a means of earning a little bit of money themselves at home with a sewing machine and making a dress or making a school uniform or whatever, and getting a little bit of money so that they're not quite so dependent on their husbands and having a bit of autonomy there. And then one of the sisters also teaches kindergarten teachers, the monitresses of the kindergartens, how to better do their work of caring for the small children that they care for, and so those are the sort of things that we do. But most of the missionaries knowing some French and some of them knowing some English, there is always a demand for that help. So that's a sort of first point of contact. But anything which will put us in touch. I will just say that in my diocese we don't have a project for the migrants as such. I consider that those who are in migration, whether they are Algerian or foreigners, they are part of humanity. Some of them are Christians, so they are part of the Christian community, the parish. Some of them are poor, so they are part of the poor people we try to help, but they're not the only ones. And so we help them in the same way as we would help the local Algerian people, although the Algerians might have help from families and neighbors and so on, which in a different way. And so we treat them not as a separate category, but as the part of our brothers and sisters who the church is there to help as much as we can. So that's basically running a rundown on the community and what we do. So now coming to St. Charles de Foucauld, Brother Charles, Charles of Jesus. We have so many names. I think we're not going to be calling him St. Charles an awful lot, because I think his own way is not to seek titles. He wouldn't have thought that. Viscount Charles, I think it's written on his tomb still, Viscount Charles de Foucauld. But anyway, so where are we, and which congregations which are the spiritual family of Charles de Foucauld are there? I'll start just in the order which I'm in. So we start with the Little Brothers of Jesus, which I think you probably know, the Petit Frères de Jésus. And they have a fraternity in Tamanrasset, which is a community of 3. two of them are normally there, and the third one has been in Algiers caring for another priest of that congregation, Father Jean Perret, who sadly passed away last week after a long illness. And so if you knew him, Jean Perret, he was a lovely, lovely man, and he had spent most of his missionary life in Algiers. And so Brother Christian will probably be going back to Tamanrasset, but that's up to his brothers to decide. So anyway, the fraternity is there. And then they also supported also in some ways from Tamanrasset. 80 kilometers away is Asakrem, where Brother Charles spent a number of months, not even a year, and had hoped to perhaps live there in the hermitage, but for various reasons, mainly the climate, he was not able to. So we have there a community of just two little brothers of Jesus as well. Father Ventura, who's from Barcelona in Spain, a Catalan, and then also Brother Specek, who's Polish. And so they are there and are really in need of at least a third one, because Father Edward from France, who was there with them, left 2 years ago and died last year. And so they really do need a third member of the community to help, especially during the school holidays when sometimes as many as 50 tourists come up from Tamanrasset to visit, to see the sunsets, visit the hermitage. And of course, they don't all come together. They come, 2s and 3s and 6s and so on. So to help and welcoming is what part of their, that is their mission. They welcome people who come for retreats, religious brothers, sisters. You can go for a retreat for a few days, or you can go for a week, or you can go for a month in a hermitage, and it's really an experience of being cut off from the world and so on. But to go there, we have to be escorted by the gendarmerie, so that's always a little bit of a limitation as to exactly when you can go and how long you stay. So those brothers in Tamanrasset and in Asakrem are members of the Little Brothers of Jesus. The Little Brothers of the Gospel have their community in Beni Abbes, and they've been there for now since the 1960s. And there are two Little Brothers of the Gospel who are there, Bernard and Henri. Henri is a priest, Bernard is a brother. And with them in the fraternity is his brother Raymond, who is a little brother of Jesus. So it's a mixed community. The two congregations have, in some places, are working together because of the difficulty and the age, because two of them are already well into their 80s and the other one in his 70s. And there appears to be at the moment on the horizon no possibility of reinforcing with younger people. So I was meeting with their prior recently, or during the canonization, the day of the canonization even, and we were saying, what can we do to keep Christian community in Beni Abbes, where Brother Charles was in 1901, 1905, and we really do want a religious community there of brothers, because without the brothers, we can't have the sisters. And the Little Sisters of Jesus, who were founded in our diocese at Tougourt, have their house and their community in Beni Abbes. Unfortunately, 3 years ago, because of the aging of some of the sisters and the lack of other ones to replace them, they had to leave there temporarily for 2 years, and it's now 3 years. And they're still hoping above hope to reopen the community in Beni Abbes with at least 3 sisters, if possible more, and with at least a male presence in Brother Charles's house there, where for various reasons we would need to have not necessarily a priest, but at least a male community also there. So that is also a worry to not prolong the absence of the sisters there. And as I say, if the brothers and the sisters were not there, we would have no Christian presence in that place, which is so important for the church and for the spirit of Charles de Foucauld, which who lived there. So that's important. And I mentioned Tugut. Tugut is where the Little Sisters of Jesus were founded by the Venerable Little Sister Madeleine. And so that there is a community of 3 sisters, and occasionally there's another one comes to join them temporarily. And so that is, I am told, by the sisters, that is what their priority for Algeria, for North Africa. And so I think it's their mother house, and hopefully, and there they are present. Their main activities are just it's the contact with the local people, the local women in particular, helping them with their children, with their all sorts of different things. They have a garden there where they produce not just vegetables for themselves, but also for helping others, and flowers. And the sisters, something which nobody else does in the south of Algeria, producing bouquets of flowers for people who are in hospital, or for people who when someone dies, or for weddings. And the people know, and Sister Twilin from Vietnam does beautiful work along with Sister Beatrice on producing beautiful bouquets of flowers, which is, no, it's not officially, it's not an official work, but well, you know, if you've grown flowers in your garden, you can give them away or sell them. So they do that, and it's appreciated by the people, and it's a point of contact with the people. They are known. Going back to Tamanrasset, then we have the Little Sisters of the Sacred Heart. That the congregations, it's not, if you don't know them, they're not a very large congregation, only in about 30 sisters or so. And so we have one sister who's there now. We had one who left some years back, but so there's just Sister Martine who is there, and she carries on the same sort of work, a little bit with handicapped children, with poor families, with migrant families who are poor, especially the women, pregnant women. She has some nursing skills, and so without working, she can advise, and so she is there has been on her own until we had a lay volunteer who arrived 2 months ago or 3 months ago, hopefully for a year or more, and who's helping, doing more or less the same thing. And Martin, of course, also visits the prisoners who are there. And so between them, they also help the parish priest with obviously with the liturgies, the Sunday liturgy, and so on. And so the Little Sisters Sacred Heart, their house was recently restored in the last couple of years. Belongs to them, and so the diocese helped with the restoration, especially with the organization of it, the managing of the work, and so that has now been done. So it's now very suitable for other volunteers, either religious or lay volunteers, to come for a time and to build up a community life, or team working on that same mission of contact with the local people, and in particular with the local Muslim people. Tamanrasset is a big town. It has a large military presence because it's not far from the frontier, the borders. It has a lot of African migrants coming through, mostly from Niger. It also has a lot of people who came from the north during the 1990s, when things were difficult, especially in the north, and settled in the south for security reasons and stayed. And of course, it also has the Tuareg population who have come into the town from the countryside around and have settled, mainly often because of the hospitals and the schools which are available in the town, rather than out in the mountains and the hills. And so it has a growing population, but not very homogeneous in terms of culture, and even in language and so on. You have Berber speakers, you have Arabic speakers, and so it's interesting. But the presence of the fathers, the brothers, and the sisters is important in the people we are able to be in contact with, and the rich heritage of Brother Charles and the other brothers and sisters who have been there over the years is not lost. The priestly fraternity, we have 4 priests who are actually members of that, who are attached to the diocese and what's called fidei donum, lent by their home diocese. I mentioned Father Marek, he's Polish from Warsaw Diocese, and he's studying a doctorate in Rome at the moment, but will be coming back to rejoin us, we're hoping next year. Then he will be teaching Arabic to our other missionaries, the local dialect Arabic, which we speak in Algeria. So if all is well, he'll be back in 2023 to be doing that. But he won't be able to do it where he was doing it before in Adra, because the White Fathers are hoping to reopen their community there. So the Little Sisters had a community in El Abiod Sidi Sheikh, which they closed, Little Sisters of Jesus, and that house is available, so it'll probably be there when he arrives. We will try and set up a school, which is not a school, language courses for our people, so they can learn to speak Arabic with the people, which of course we need to do to deepen our relationships. But we have one of the priests who arrived only in December, Michel, and he's in Tamanrasset. We had a 2-year gap. The previous priest, for reasons we don't really know, was obliged to leave the country and go back to his home country. And so we had a long gap where we had no priest in Tamanrasset. And so the brothers and the sister and the other Christians there only had the sacraments maybe once a month when somebody was able to come, or occasionally a little bit more if somebody came and spent a little time there. But being without the sacraments on a regular basis is part of being the mission in a country like Algeria, and indeed many other countries of the world where there is not the local church is not established sufficiently, and where we are so spread out. When I was a child living in the Sudan, as was mentioned, my mother, she had mass once in the year. There was a priest who came past the town where we were. So it is, especially for religious people, we really do have to remember that the sacraments are celebrated for the whole church. And so when they celebrate a mass in Rome or in Oklahoma or somewhere, it's for the whole church. And so if we are not physically present, we are present through the Holy Spirit. And so Father Michel is there now in Tamanrasset. Another priest from the priestly fraternity is in El Mania. You've heard of El Golea. El Golea is El Mania. The name before independence was El Golea, which means the strong place, and El Mania means the fortress. And there's another name in Berber which means the hill or the mountain. It all means the same thing. It's just a different name for the same place. So the official name today is El Mania, but Brother Charles is buried there. St. Charles is buried there. You've seen pictures of his tomb. He's in the cemetery where there are about 50 other tombs, very simple ones. Perhaps St. Charles's tomb is a little bit over the top, I would say, compared to those who are beside him. He would have preferred definitely something more simple, but his family or whoever prefers, and it's for them to decide. I will say a word about that a little later on. Then there's a fourth priest who is also El Mania at the moment, but just at the moment he is in Gardaya, where I am, also from France. He's from France. The one who's in Father Jesus is his name, and you won't be surprised to know that he's from Spain, from Valencia. That's the priestly fraternity. The lay fraternity, there are about 10 or 12 members in the north. One of them died very recently, Jean Génigan, a Frenchman who did an awful lot for the lay fraternity of Jesus Caritas. And unfortunately, after a long illness, a cancer, he passed away just 2 weeks ago. And so we pray for him and also for his wife, Teresa. But there are about 10 or 12 in the north of the country, but in the Sahara, there are no lay fraternity members as such. So of course, there may be lay people who have an attachment to Brother Charles. Almania, I mentioned, there's a church in Almania because way back there was a project to create a Christian village made up of Algerian orphans. And it was a project which the founder of the White Fathers, Cardinal Lavigerie, who was the bishop there 150 years ago in the south as well, the vicar. And he thought that if we could get a community, a village of Christians living in the midst of the Sahara, that might grow and so on. It didn't work. The cultural difference, it was to become a Christian, you more or less had to become French culturally, and they couldn't do that. And so one by one, especially when they wanted to marry local people or something, it didn't remain, or else they left and went to Europe. So that didn't happen. But it was during that time that the tomb of Brother Charles was moved from Algeria, from Tamanrasset to Algeria in 1929. And so the hope was that it would be in a place where there was a Christian community and a Christian church. So the Church of St. Joseph is there. And the Little Sisters of Jesus had a community there for a number of years. And there is a sort of area of dunes, I wouldn't call it much more than that, with a few palm trees in it around the area. So we do have the beginnings of a project which we're thinking of restoration. And the restoration would include 5 stages. One would be to put a wall around it to secure the area which belongs to us, to ensure that other people don't come and start building on our land, which would then create problems and things with the justice and the law courts and so on. So to put a wall around it, which is fine, and that would also secure the church to prevent the windows being broken occasionally or graffiti being put on the walls. Then the cemetery, including the tomb. I thought perhaps over the tomb of Charles de Foucauld we could put what's called a kuba, which is a cupola, a little dome, which would cover the tomb and would fit in with the tombs of the Muslims in North Africa are usually exactly that, a dome for the saints. So where you have a saint's tomb, Sidi someone, El Abiyo Sidi Sheikh, there are several mausoleums, and they always have one of those. So if we put one of those with a small cross on the top, that would fit in very nicely. The Little Sisters in Toucourt have a kuba, which is a prayer place. And so visitors to the tomb would be in the shade on one hand, because it would be slightly open. And on the other hand, the tomb would fit into the local architecture. Even in the Holy Land, I understand that some of the Jewish tombs are also in the same style. So that would fit in. Then we need to restore the church, especially on the inside, the vault above, without having the accident which they had in Saumur, which led to the miracle. But anyway, so there is restoration to put the Church of St. Joseph in good order. And then in the buildings behind where the sisters were left maybe 30, 40 years ago, that needs to be completely restored because it's built out of mud bricks and so on. That could be the priest's house, and then a place for like a museum, Charles de Foucauld, and a place of interreligious meeting, different activities which could take place in a polyvalent room or whatever. So the idea is there, but the detail is not yet worked out. And then for the rest, where there are the dunes behind and the palm trees, where the people I used to come sometimes and sit in the evenings and talk, the men, the women, not together usually. That we would just plant a few more trees and make it into a park open to the neighbors, where they could come and relax on our land, so that it would be a bit more agreeable for them. And so that's the idea behind the project. And it's not launched yet because we don't have the people to manage it. But once we do launch it, then obviously we are going to be looking for help. And there are already people in Algeria as well as in Europe and so on who say, oh, well, we would be able to help with this bit or that bit, the cemetery or the church or the park or whatever. So that's we're hoping for that. I mentioned other places. El Abiyo Sidi Sheikh was where the Little Brothers of Jesus were founded, and that was their mother house. And initially they were founded there in a somewhat contemplative community, not so much going out among the people as almost like a monastery. And about 8 years ago, they decided that they would have to close it, and so they left there. Then they gave the buildings and the gardens and so on. They gave it to the Ministry of Culture, hoping that it would then become a museum or something of that sort. As up to date, it hasn't been used. The garden is used as for gardening, for producing vegetables and so on. But the buildings are not used and so on. So the brothers are hoping that the agreement, which was to use it for something cultural, will be taken up. And the house of the Little Sisters who were there, Little Sisters of Jesus, and they left in 2017, has been empty. There's a family living and taking care of it for us. That is where I'm hoping that could become our language center, because it's La Biot-Sédichek is a long way from the French-speaking parts of the country. So if the sisters and the brothers go there to learn local Arabic, they're not going to be talking French in the evenings and going back to their community like in the capital in Algiers. It's very French-speaking as far as the church is concerned. So when you're cut off and out in the desert, in a town such as that, then you don't have so much temptation to be speaking French. And so يتكلم بالعربي بينكم في كل وقت, anyway, talking Arabic all the time, even at meals, as much as possible anyway. And so that sort of immersion is obviously, anyone who's a teacher will tell you that that's the best way to learn a language, is to go in. Unfortunately, it's very difficult for the individuals to go to families, because of the culture is such that, you know, a man can't just go and live in a family where there are women folk, and a little bit the other way around as well. So it's difficult, especially in the traditional South, to have those sort of be welcome. There are families who would welcome us, but it's not always easy to arrange. I've nearly finished. That's the communities of the spiritual family of Charles de Foucauld who are in the South today. There were many more, as I say. The Little Sisters of Jesus were also in Tamanrasset and in other places. They were known in Togot. They were known as the Blue Sisters, because the White Sisters wore white veils, and they wear still blue veils, and so on. In the north, of course, also the Little Brothers and the Little Sisters of Jesus both have communities or individuals here and there. There's a community of Little Sisters of Jesus in Algiers. And then since last year, the Discepoli del Vangelo, the Disciples of the Gospel, Italian congregation, recently formed, relatively recently formed, and have quite a number of young sisters who are in Italy, but also in France, in Viviers. They help the diocese to take care of the archives of Brother Charles and our archives there, and they have a community there. And then they have a community in Marseille for the last 7 years or so, living in the northern quarter of Marseille, which is a very immigrant quarter, and where most of the immigrants are from North Africa, and most of those are from Algeria. So it's almost a bit of Algeria across the sea. And then last year, they started a community in Algiers. And so they have 3 sisters there working, helping in different work for the church. One of them with Caritas, another one helping at the Papal Nunciature at the moment, and so on. And of course, my hope and our hope is that eventually, if they have enough sisters, which is not the case at the moment, then they will, from the north, they will be able to open a community in Tamanrasset to support that, because there, obviously, that is the anyone who's from the spirituality of Charles de Foucauld, Tamanrasset is so meaningful, like El Menia and Beni Abbes. And so the superior general says can't do anything at the moment. We haven't got enough. We've got other places where we are also starting, and so obviously we recognise that. But we can pray and hope that the time will come when the disciples of the gospel will have a community in Tamanrasset, living the spirituality of Charles de Foucault alongside the Little Sisters of the Sacred Heart, or maybe taking over from them, whatever. So that's our hope, and my hope that day will come one day. But we can't push it. It all depends on the future, and the future is in the hands of God. That's nearly finished. I just mentioned a couple of other things. Pilgrimages. Some of the people, while I was here, after the canonization, we had the Thanksgiving Mass on the Monday in St. John Lateran Church, Basilica. And then straight after that, the Association of the Spiritual Family of Charles de Foucault had a 4-day meeting here in Rome, where we were able to discuss various aspects of both the association and relationships between the different congregations and institutes and the fraternities, and trying to have as much as possible a family relationship. One or two of the congregations were not present, those from Haiti, the Little Brothers of the Incarnation, Little Sisters of the Incarnation, who need our prayers because the situation in Haiti is very difficult. And so we had that meeting, and people were asking me about pilgrimages. Well, is it difficult now to go to Tamanrasset, to go and visit? And it's not as difficult as it was during the what's called the Black Decade, when there was a civil war in Algeria in the 1990s. That finished in the early 2000s. What then became difficult was getting visas, but tourist visas were possible, especially if they were arranged through a tourist agency. And then with the pandemic, of course, the borders closed and there was no people coming in at all. Even Algerians were not able to get back from abroad if they were abroad. And so that is now getting lighter. Obviously, I'm speaking to you from Rome, so I've been able to get out, and I hope the day after tomorrow I'll be able to get back to Algeria. So yes, I think they are possible. Some seasons are better than others for going there. If you want to go to Beni Abbes, then I would avoid the summer, the heat of the northern hemisphere summer, July, August. Tamanrasset and Asakrem. Well, Asakrem gets too cold, but it's not so cold that it's not supportable. And you just have to bring a good coat and some rubber boots or something. But anyway, for all of that, the best thing, in my opinion, is to arrange it with a travel agency to see what's possible, because there are travel agencies who organize everything, help with how to get the visa, how to arrange for the escorts which may be necessary, the 4x4 transport to get you from Tamanrasset to Asakrem, and so on. And then, of course, the parish priest or the Catholic community to see about having mass in the frigate, the house which Charles de Foucault lived in Tamanrasset, for example, or the fraternity in Beni Abbes and so on, in the church at Mania. Obviously, that needs to be arranged with the local church, the local parish priest. And there are times when there's nobody there, the parish priest isn't there. But there is a website, the Église catholique d'Algérie. You speak a bit of French, means Catholic Church in Algeria. And if you find that website, then somewhere in the Laguat Gardaya part, you can find the email addresses and telephone numbers of the reference person, if you are planning to come, so that you will be made welcome by anyone from the church who is there. But sometimes there are times when the place is closed and there's nobody there. So obviously, to go on a pilgrimage, it does take a bit of organizing. And one of the things they sometimes say is a bit difficult is just being accompanied by the security people all the time and having to declare. But if you're with an agency, they will do the declaring the foreign visitors, which is necessary. We live with that. So that's a possibility of pilgrimages, and it's always very welcome. Obviously, if it's a big group, there are hotels in those 3 places anyway. No problem for that. And if it's just one individual and so on, if you contacted the local priest or sister, then sometimes it's possible for to be accommodated with the sisters or within a guest house or somewhere possible, but not always. Also, I was asked about relics. There are some people who ask, particularly now, for relics of Charles de Foucault. In principle, and I was discussing this with the postulator, Father Bernard Adora, and also with Bishop Claude Rowe, who was my predecessor, that we feel that yes, of course, there are places where veneration of relics of Charles de Foucault, Saint Charles de Foucault, is very appropriate, but it needs to be a church or a religious chapel, and it's not for private collections or somebody who collects relics of different saints a little bit. Maybe some people collect stamps or something, they want a different one. Oh, there's another saint, I could have a relic of him, and so it is for veneration by a Christian community normally in a church. And then if somebody in particular wants to pray before the relic, then they go to the church. And if it's somebody who visits prisons or hospitals, then they ask the priest or the person in charge of the relic if they can take it with them for a visit, pastoral visit for the sick or something like that. So there are ways of doing it, but so we have got relics. I've confided some to the priest in the Philippines, who is the prior of the priestly fraternity, Jesus Caritas, Father Lenny also, and so and then 1 or 2 others in Europe and Asia, so that if need be, they can receive relics. But we don't want to just give out relics. They're parts of his burial cloth, the cloth in which he was buried in Tamanrasset, and which was exchanged for a new one when his body was moved in 1929. And so that cloth is a second, it's a relic. It's something that touched his body. It's not part of his body, but it's something that touched his body when he was dead. So they are very good relics. But if you know of a church which is dedicated to Saint Charles de Foucault, or a religious community or a monastery, there's one in Carthage in Tunisia, which is the monastery Charles de Foucault. So, and if they are thinking of a relic, well, then they can write to me at the address I mentioned. You can get me, and anyway, Father Lenny has my address, and Ciro has my address, and explain, and we can see what we can do to provide a relic to some church.
Thank you.
Special devotion. And that really is what I have to say. And so now I'm here for answering your questions if I can. I'm a white father. I'm not myself a member of the spiritual family congregation, but I do obviously. I love.
Thank you.
St. Charles, and like him, I'm an ex-soldier, even if I was on the wrong side, being British instead of French.
Thank you so much, Bishop McWilliams, Brother John, for that wonderful testimonial. The messenger is the message. That's what I remember in life. The messenger is the message. And I'm deeply touched by your testimonial when you say that the primary focal point of your ministry in that very, very large diocese is simply being there. Being there. Seeds of the desert, fruits of the life of tomorrow, and the young boy, now English school teacher, your student, is a wonderful testimony of that. So thank you very much. At this point in time, time is going forward, and I am sure I can look at your faces and I can see the burgeoning number of questions and reactions and responses. So how exactly are we going to do this? Well, we'll try to do this as simply as possible. And so what we will do, for those of you who have a thought to share, a question to ask, a reflection on what our brother has shared with us, please be brief. to allow Brother John an opportunity of providing a short answer to your question. Number two, how do we ask our question? Now, this will be an interesting experiment. We will offer you one of two approaches to ask your question. The first one is to raise your virtual hand, not your human hand, your virtual hand. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will have an icon entitled Reaction. If you click on Reaction, you have a little tab that says Raise Hand, Lower Hand. That's the hard way. The easy way is simply to go into your chat box and simply say question or the letter Q. And myself, or perhaps little sister Kathy Wright, here present today, will call upon you, at which point you will unmute yourself, ask your question, and then remute yourself. It requires a university degree to accomplish all these actions. So I am sorry for the complexity, but we're trying to be as simple and respectful of everyone's time and willingness to share and to listen. Does that sound like a decent approach? Are we happy with this? Thank you so much. So who is the first to brave and open up the path, the way to ask the first question? None other than Sister Kathy Perdue. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you. Your microphone, Catherine. There you are.
Bishop John, during your talk in the Lateran, you emphasized forgiveness of the enemy. And I was very moved by that. And you invited us to spend a minute or so to reflect on that and to bring it into our prayer. And I would just be interested to know, what was it that kind of made you put the emphasis on that in a talk on Brother Charles? I was very interested and I was very moved. Thank you.
Okay, the talk in question was my homily.
Yeah.
And I was talking about Jesus saying, there's no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. And so who are your friends? And I said, it's the poor, but also the rich. And then I said the soldiers, and I described them as the peacemakers, as in the gospel, soldiers are peacemakers normally if they're doing what they should be doing. And then I said enemies. Our Lord said, love your friends, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. The reason behind that, I suppose, is way back when I was in the army in Northern Ireland. I used to pray for the people who wanted to kill me. We would call the terrorists. Different people have different descriptions, and in other places as well. They are my brothers. Whatever motivation they have for wanting to get rid of me, and whatever reason I might have for having to fire on them, they are still my brothers, and I have to love them. And I think that is something which is very deep in me. There is no enemy he is not lovable. Jesus told us that, and so that's why I put that into that homily.
Thank you very much. Is there another question, thought, reflection that someone would like to share? Not all at once, because it's very difficult to manage. There we have little brother Xavier. Bonjour.
Oui, thank you. I appreciate what the presence and the communication from Bishop John for all the friends in the Sahara. We are blessed with receiving the monthly newsletter from your diocese. I wonder if you could publicize how to get hold of it, because it's a lovely testimony.
Yes, it's really just a short pastoral letter every 2 months, which I write really for the people in the diocese. but it goes much wider for those who have lived and worked there for the church beforehand, and then it seems to have a wider circulation. But it's not the same as the other dioceses have a more glossy and with more articles and so on. We don't have many articles. It's more news that so-and-so's father is ill, or could you pray for them, and what the bishop's going to be doing next month, and so on. With a little one-page reflection on my part on the first page, and a prayer on the fourth page. We call it En Chemin, on the way, which actually fits in very nicely with the synod, where we are sharing the way with each other. And so how to get hold of it? Well, again, you could write to me, or you could write, if you find the website of the church, Catholic Church in Algeria, Église catholique en Algérie, you can find our diocese and the secretariat of the diocese. The address is there. You write to Marie there and just say you want to receive En Chemin, and she will arrange it. Otherwise, you can write to me and I will pass the message on, and you will be added to the list. It helps if you say that you are part of the Charles de Foucauld family, because then we know that it's not, well, we know who it is. But anyway, it's open, it's on the internet, it's on the, there you
Thank
are.
you for.
You're welcome to receive it, you're welcome to read it, but sometimes what is written in there doesn't mean much to somebody who doesn't know the people in the diocese, because it's a family newsletter rather than a broader document.
Wonderful way to stay connected. Thank you. We have a question here written in the chat. I look at my brother Peter. Perhaps you would like to state your question in person.
Yes, hi there. Hello, Bishop. Do you find that there are aspects of Islam that are useful, that you appreciate and help you in your encounters with Muslims?
Yes, there are many aspects. I've lived among Muslims from my childhood in the early 50s, and it has one of the things. If I became a missionary to the Muslims, it's because I felt that there's one God. They are praying, they worship, they pray to one God. So do we. The big difference, of course, is that God became man for us in Jesus Christ, and not for them. They received their message in another way, in a book, and so on. But the devotion to prayer, the fidelity to prayer and to fasting, and very often also to what we would consider some of the sort of charitable acts, from helping the poor, helping the widows and orphans, as it's written in the Quran. All of that is impressive, and among Muslims, it touches us as much as it should touch others when Christians do the same thing. And so someone says, "Oh, that's a very Christian thing to do." Well, we're not the only ones who practice charity. I once, very rapidly, I'll say, when I was in the army in Oman, and just driving across the desert there with just one driver. And he said, "Can we stop to pray?" So I said, "Of course." So we stopped. He got out of the Land Rover one side, I got the other side. He said his prayer in the direction of Mecca, and I said some prayers on the other side. And that stayed with me. There we are, two people praying to the same God, and we've got a vehicle in between us. What a shame. Wouldn't it be nice if we could both be the same side of the vehicle? So something like that. Most of us probably have contacts with Muslims. Sometimes it's just to say Eid Mubarak when it's their feast, and they will say Happy Christmas when it's our feast. They don't know Easter so well, but just the greetings and respect. And we meet it in North Africa in general. We meet respect from the Muslims we meet. There are some who don't want us there, they don't want us to exist. But then there are people who call themselves Christians who don't want Muslims living among them. So both of those, I would say, haven't really listened to the message of God in their religion.
Thank you. We have a few words of gratitude here by Farida in the chat, which I don't see her on the screen. Forgive me, but I will read the words, and you can as well. I am an Algerian now in Louisiana. Thank you for sharing some part of my land with us. So thank you, Farida. Thank you, Brother John, for accomplishing that.
Yeah,
Our-
merci beaucoup. It's early here. That's what I didn't put my camera.
It's okay, Farida. Thank you for your time.
Merci. Au revoir.
Merci à toi.
Aslama.
Salam.
Azul. Are you from Kabylie?
Yes, je suis Kabyle, oui.
Azul Filim. Voilà.
Azul Filek, ça va, mkstile?
Oh, ça va.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Are there any other questions? Don't be shy. It's free. There is no final exam at the end of the session. Any shares, any words? Brother John, a brief and short question, please. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I am always struck with now Saint Charles de Foucauld, how many moments of conversion that the good man had within his life, and how long it took for it to sink to a level of a stronger listening. For instance, when he was in the military, he said when he was asked to surrender his mistress, he said, "No way, so I'm getting out of here." And yet when he was in the Sahara, he asked a superior what if it were appropriate for him to pray the Quran with his lectionary, if you will. And the superior said, no. And he says, okay, I get it. I get so nervous sometimes that the conversion moment will be concentrated on the infamous confessional, which is extremely sacramental, extremely Catholic, whereas there were so many widespread conversion moments that were dependent on being present with another religion, as when he was masquerading as a rabbi, and he recognized for the first time what it felt like to be objectified. And then when he was within the lands of Islam and he saw the fervent prayer, all dedicated to the one God. If anything can come from Charles de Foucault's spirituality, it is that in itself. Where do I find in the abstract and outside the mainstream my love for God? Thank you.
Thank you, Brother John.
I think that's very true that very often conversion experiences are drop by drop, a bit like a shower. You just get a little bit of water and then suddenly there's a bucket of cold water gets thrown on you, like St. Paul at Damascus and so on. And so Charles de Foucauld had qualities. He was very generous. He helped people who needed money and so on. He already, all through, even during his Playboy times, he wasn't lacking in qualities. And I think we have to wait for the Holy Spirit to decide at what moment that becomes a major conversion thing. And then you say, well, are you telling me something? Okay, decision time. We'll go that way. Otherwise, we're just moving little by little, getting touched by the events of life. So what's important, I think, and Charles de Foucauld knew this, it's to recognize the little incidents in life which actually come from the Spirit, and then they become part of something greater. So I think that's what St. Charles had.
Thank you. We have a brief word here from Nora Steen. Forgive me if my eyes can't capture you on the screen, but she indicates that she visited Gardaya prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and was very well received by the local priest. Thank you for your presence. So kudos to Nora, and thank you, Brother John. I see that Carolyn Price has raised her virtual hand, and now the word is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to say it was lovely hearing about your idea of planting some more trees in one of the places. I can't remember exactly where it was. And I was just thinking in this moment of this 7th anniversary of Laudato Si, and in this desert community, how very symbolic that is. This wanting to do something to help the reality of so many people who live in the desert in a time of climate change. And what a beautiful sign that is. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Probably be mostly palm trees, but there are other trees which could go there. There is a well on our ground there. It's dunes, but you know, there's a few palm trees. If we can increase the number, have more shade, put a bench here or there, and we do try to pay attention to the ecological side, obviously, and avoid pollution. But the country is not very organized for sorting the rubbish between the plastic and the paper and all the rest. It's not a priority for the people on the whole. But where we are with the children and so on, we at least try to slide in a little bit of conscience about taking care of the planet the Lord has entrusted to us.
Thank you. I'll take a few comments and questions. Little Sister Kathy, I will come to you in a moment. I will use your question as a pivot point, if you don't mind. Thank you. We have here Barbara McGowan. Is she on the screen, or am I not seeing her? She asks an important question. There she is. Barbara, would you like to ask your question yourself? You can unmute yourself. There you are.
Yes. In 1975, we camped near the grave of Charles de Foucault, and we visited the church there, and we saw Stations of the Cross, which he had drawn himself. And my question is, are they still there?
Not in the church. There are some drawings which he drew, which are in Beni Abbes, St. Joseph with the child Jesus in his arms, and one of Our Lady with child Jesus in her arms. And there's a photograph of Charles de Foucault. There are posters of his life, which we put there for the centenary of his death. But there are not Stations of the Cross drawn by Charles de Foucault in the church at Almeria that I know. Where they went, I don't know. I could try to find out, but I think they might have gone perhaps to Tre Fontani, where the Little Sisters of Jesus are. But I don't recall having seen them, not the originals anyway. I think I've seen them in a book or in a booklet, but I haven't seen the originals on the wall there. There are Stations of the Cross, but they're not drawn by him. They are more recent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brother William, drive safely.
Yes, I will.
I see that you're driving and looking at your phone at the same time.
No,
you're an able man.
I'm not moving, but what I wanted to say was the Little Sisters of Jesus at the Miyashita Catholic Church there in Tokyo, Japan, really have Brother Charles alive and living. And I was so blessed to receive one of the booklets with some of the drawings, some of his influences that he had. It was obviously a replica booklet, but I will say that it was a blessing just to be experiencing that there at that Catholic chapel, and to see the influence that he had, not only there, but in Lourdes, France, where there was a lot of posters and flyers just marking the occasion of where we are right now at this time. That is it. Over.
Thank you, Brother Williams.
Talking of booklets, we produced for the canonization, well, it was done by the disciples of the gospel, a little booklet, just very, very small, 40 pages on the life of Charles de Foucault with photographs and the prayer. And it was done also in Arabic, for those of you who prefer it in Arabic. And we distributed those to the Christians in Algeria, the Catholics in particular, but other ones as well. And also to Algerian friends, even Muslims, who wanted to know more about St. Charles.
I may actually cheat and interject with my own personal question. I have many, time is going by, but a question that persists in time is the following, is how do the Algerians view Brother Charles today? And is he perceived as a brother and a witness of that dialogue, particularly at the level of the interreligious, particularly at the level of the social structure fracture that Algeria has undergone in the last 20 years? It's resolving slowly, but can you comment on how Brother Charles is perceived today?
The vast majority of Algerians don't know anything about Brother Charles. Those who are educated, university education, perhaps especially if it involves history and so on, perhaps the language, the Tuareg language, they would know who he was, they would know something about him. And the people in Tamanrasset, especially those involved in tourism industry, they would know who he is because people come to visit, also Beni Abbes and Armenia. But the huge majority of the population have never heard of him. He was part of the colonial era over 100 years ago. If they did know anything about him, they would say, well, who was this French priest among the colons? Nothing to do with us. Anyway, so there is generally not a hatred towards him other than people who would sort of put him down as being too much in cahoots with the French army, which was the colonial power, and which at different stages didn't behave particularly well in terms of human rights. But of course, that was without the permission of the French army, he couldn't be there. And in Beni Abbes, he was also chaplain to the soldiers, not that they were particularly practicing, but some were. And so he was a priest exercising his priesthood. So the majority wouldn't know him. Those who do know him, they see him, they know that he's our saint, according to our criteria. We can tell them that we've had miracles, and so that we believe that he is in heaven. There's a sign from God. And yes, we have saints. They have saints. Some of the Muslims, especially the Sufi Muslims, they have saints who they venerate. Let's put it that way. So in that sense, when he does become known to the local people, they treat his memory with respect because they treat us with respect, and he's part of what we are. So we wouldn't expect, for example, his tomb to be in any way desecrated. I haven't known it be desecrated. There was something in the cemetery once, somebody put red paint on it, but it wasn't his tomb. So I don't think, in general, it's very rare that cemeteries are not well respected among the Muslim people. The problems in Islam is not vis-a-vis Christians, it's vis-a-vis other Muslims, and it's the very sad distrust and sometimes even violence between Muslims of one tradition and another tradition, which we see in the Gulf countries, and we've seen in Iraq and Syria and so on. And we pray that they will find that fraternity which we pray for in our own ecumenical wish to be brothers and sisters of each other within Christianity as a starting point. So that is what I think part of our work there as well, especially in Gardea. There have been frictions between the two communities who have different cultures and different branches of Islam. And they have been incidents, especially about 6 years ago. And we are friends to both. And sometimes we are like a footbridge between them, and we can put them in touch when they come to visit our library or to study in class. They're all together. There's no division. Well, there might be a division, the girls on one side and the boys on the other, but that's part of their tradition. But not really when they're with us. Between them, they're fine with each other. They may not invite each other to each other's marriages, but that's their affair.
There's been a short exchange in the chat for those in response to Farida's question of where are the archives of Brother Charles in Vivier. I invite you to read that exchange if that is of interest to you. And I'd like to point to a special invitation by our own Brother Lenny, who has been our historical cornerstone on this side of the pond for any prayers of abandonment, cards, photos. He really is our repository. And if you are interested, would like to have information, the contact and email is clearly indicated in the chat box. It is at this point that I will not fail on my promise to invite Kathy McKee, little sassy Kathy McKee, to ask her question. And this will serve as the final question for this segment of our meeting today. Little sister.
My question was, Bishop John, what struck you during this ceremony in Rome, the canonization? I was just interested personally, what had struck you, spoken to you?
What you're asking, what struck me during the canonization?
What touched you, what struck you? Yeah.
I think there was a joy, and the Holy Father himself expressed the joyfulness. I was very aware myself that although I was there for St. Charles de Foucauld, there were 10 saints being canonized, and 2 of them were martyrs, and that is Saint Lazarus from India, and the saint who died in the concentration camp Nazi times, and the others, founders of congregations who themselves brought something of Christ's life to particular groups. And I didn't want to be just with the majority who seemed to be there. By far the biggest shout was when Charles de Foucauld was mentioned. So it was clear that the biggest number, especially with the French and so on, was for Charles de Foucauld, and of course he is worldwide and well known throughout the world, but much more than the other ones were. But I put them together, and I think this our Lord chose to have 12 apostles. He didn't just choose 1 or 2, and I think that's one of the things that struck me, was that we were there all together, and Charles de Foucauld, even if he lived his life with Jesus apart from the great centers of population, you can't be with Jesus without being with the rest of humanity, and Jesus himself made that message. So I think he calls the expression the universal brother, which in the talks we had beforehand, we were reminded was the brother to all humanity, or mankind, if you like, rather than the word universal, which isn't terribly well understood. So the brother to all humanity, all mankind. Then in that sense, the coming together from different spiritual families, to me, that's something that personally I felt, even if many others were in their particular camp.